Hello, my name is Mike Figgis. I'm based in London and I'm teaching here at Yonsei University. I'm always looking for a challenge as a filmmaker or as an artist. Even though I'm British and I live in London, so I've worked in America and I've worked in France, and I always find that going to a radically different culture, you find things that are similar but many things that are different, which forces you to examine your ideas in a different way, because ultimately to create something, an artwork or a film, it's a process. So one of the challenges that I'm trying to set up for myself, aside from teaching, is the idea of making a strong narrative film in a different language, a language that I don't speak, using actors who come from a different tradition. I mean, obviously I've done some research, so I have watched a lot of Korean dramas, both on cinema and also on television. And I find it to be a very young but vibrant culture, so I'm attracted to it. And I became really, really impressed, actually, with the K-drama. I would say more so than with the film, in terms of their themes of love stories that are very complicated and so on. And also relationships, gender relationships. They're very well written, and they're very, very well acted. So, there's a number of Korean actresses that I think are very impressive. So that was in a way more of an inspiration to me, in terms of the potential for making a film in Korea. When you teach, let's say initially in a formal situation, in other words, you're telling them things, you're showing some ideas, let's say in terms of practical ideas, I was focusing on the portrait. I was saying that, in fact, if you study the portrait, the human face, and also try and get as far away from the idea of the selfie as possible, this could be more useful for you. So if you're going to look at portraiture, then you need to start studying lighting. You have to look at each image and kind of say, where is the light coming from? And how much light is there and how much darkness is there? Only through that will you start to find some truth in a portrait. So I told them this, and then finally, in fact, last week, we had a day of completely practical filmmaking or portraiture, and I said, okay, now you go and take some portraits. In fact, portrait each other, So I made everybody take a portrait of each other. And then they're going to each make a personal film based on a group portrait. And I was really, really impressed that they had listened and that they were using the building in an interesting way. I said, go out of the classroom, find light wherever you are. Go outside, go in the corridor, turn some lights off. And they were suddenly incredibly energetic and with great enthusiasm and being very, very creative. In fact, I had to sort of say, look, we have to stop now. Normally it's like, okay, we're finished, I had to warn them that the time was running out and we had to stop. So I was very pleased. It was rewarding. The creative process, maybe this is a sad statement, but seems to function at its best when there is a real restriction of possibility. So you find a voice in a restrictive environment, and the urge to have a voice comes from that restriction. If you have an infinity of choices, and both in terms of narrative and in terms of equipment and so on, for a young person who is not a revolutionary or deprived, I think it gets increasingly more difficult for them to find motivation to have a voice. It's like, what are they going to do? Make commercials or make some TV or some, you know what I mean? So in order to bypass that problem, it almost requires that the students themselves kind of go, I don't need that. I don't need that. I want to form a small, tight group of people. I always sort of say, make a group, 3-4 people, somebody who can produce. You all can help with the camera. You can form, and then talk to each other about what you want to say, and then find a story, But I feel really sorry for most students who just have too much possibilities, and it's difficult for them. It's difficult for them to find their voice, So my advice is, don't ever take another selfie. Find, some equipment that works for you efficiently, and that's not so difficult. I mean, this camera is good, not so expensive, The technology you're using today is not expensive, but it's of a very high quality. So, you can make a film for the cinema with this equipment, and people will be happy with the visual image. So it's not like 50 years ago when there was an economic problem. It's really a question of, focusing on the essential things that you would need to make a film, and then being really quite strict and disciplined. And the discipline is a very hard thing. It's very hard to have discipline when you have too much choice. So almost like you need the strength to create your own discipline. And that's the challenge for a young filmmaker now.